I was thrown out at 18 with nothing but a backpack. Now they want to move into my $800,000 house after years of silence and lies. I was 18 when my mother told me I wasn't capable of anything meaningful. It wasn't some heated argument or emotional outburst. She said it calmly, folding towels in the laundry room like she was stating a simple fact. "You're the backup plan," she said, not even making eye contact. "Your sister Olivia is our investment. You're just insurance in case something goes wrong." I think that moment etched itself permanently into my soul. Growing up, I always felt like an extra in someone else's movie. My younger sister Olivia was the golden child, the cheerleading captain, straight A student, everyone's favorite. She had the bedroom with the walk-in closet and private bathroom, a brand new MacBook the day she started high school, and parents who called her our shining star even when she messed up. Me? I was the one who got Olivia's hand-me-downs, suspicious looks, and criticism for breathing too loudly. At first, I convinced myself I was the problem. I worked harder, got a job at 14 bagging groceries, maintained solid B's and A's, even tutored Olivia in algebra when she started failing. But nothing ever changed. My father said I lacked drive when I mentioned wanting to study graphic design instead of pre-law. My mother called me irresponsible when I overslept on Saturdays, even after working until midnight stocking shelves. And Olivia? She just smirked whenever they tore into me, like she was silently enjoying every single criticism. Things exploded the autumn I turned 18. Olivia totaled my father's BMW after leaving a party, completely destroyed it while driving drunk. I was the one who found her crying hysterically in our garage at 2 a.m., blood running down from a cut on her forehead, absolutely terrified, begging me not to tell mom and dad. I didn't tell them. I took the blame instead. I told my parents I'd borrowed the car without asking, that I'd been reckless and crashed it into a telephone pole. I thought maybe, just maybe, this act of loyalty would finally earn me some respect. Maybe they'd see I was capable of protecting the family, of being selfless. Instead, they kicked me out that very night. My father didn't even raise his voice. He just pointed toward the front door and said, "Pack your belongings. You've embarrassed this family for the last time." That night, I slept on a bench at the train station 6 blocks away. The next morning, I walked back to grab my school textbooks from the porch, only to find a backpack stuffed with some of my clothes and a note taped to it that read, "You made your choice. Figure out life on your own now." Nobody checked on me, not once. My mother told people at the country club that I'd run away with a bad crowd because I was going through a rebellious phase. Olivia went on a vacation to Cancun with her friends 3 weeks later, posting beach sunset photos and selfies like absolutely nothing had happened. I kept myself alive by working overnight shifts at a 24-hour diner, sleeping in the cramped break room on a pile of apron cushions when the owner wasn't around. But you know what the absolute worst part was? The silence. No birthday calls, no holiday texts, no, "Hey, are you still alive?" messages. It was like I had been completely erased from existence for 4 years. 4 entire years. It was only after I earned my associate degree in marketing through community college after I'd moved 2 cities away and built a small freelance digital consulting business working from library computers and coffee shop Wi-Fi that I finally felt like maybe, just maybe, I was free of them. Until 2 months ago, I got a text from my mother. Just one line. "Saw your interview in the Tribune business section." That really you? Yes, it was me. The local business association had featured me in their 30 Under 30 Innovators Spotlight after I'd helped several struggling local businesses quadruple their online sales and social media engagement during the pandemic. It wasn't exactly a massive accomplishment in the grand scheme of things, but to me it was everything. It was proof that I wasn't a backup plan, that I was more than just a shadow in their perfect family picture. 3 hours later, my father called. I didn't answer. Then came the voicemails from Olivia, from cousins and aunts and uncles I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them suddenly warm, suddenly supportive, suddenly very curious about how I was doing and what I'd been up to. I didn't reply, not yet because I knew. I just knew deep in my gut. They hadn't changed. They were only reaching out because they saw I had something they wanted, and sure enough, the very next day my mother called again. This time, she left a voicemail message that made my blood run cold. "Sweetheart, we're going through a really rough patch right now. Olivia and Marcus are about to lose their condo. They're 3 months behind on rent. We were wondering if you still had that spare bedroom you mentioned once, just until they get back on their feet." I actually laughed out loud, because that spare bedroom didn't exist. I had bought an entire 4-bedroom house, and I had paid for it in cash. I didn't respond to my mother's voicemail. Not that day. Not the next day. Not even when my cousin Rachel sent me a Facebook message saying, "You know, it would really show a lot of maturity and growth if you stepped up for your family right now in their time of need." Stepped up. I almost spit out my coffee. Where were you when I was sleeping on train station benches, cousin Rachel? It's fascinating how people love to use the word family, like it's some kind of magical get-out-of-jail-free card. Like shared DNA somehow erases everything they did or didn't do. Like blood automatically makes up for years of abandonment. I didn't block them. I didn't post anything angry on social media. I just stayed silent. But apparently, silence wasn't good enough for them. The following Tuesday, I came home from a client strategy meeting and saw a familiar vehicle parked across the street from my house. A silver pickup truck, the same one my father had driven for the past decade. I stared at it for a solid 5 minutes before I even pulled into my driveway. There was absolutely no mistaking it. And sure enough, sitting on my front porch steps with a casserole dish of what I assumed was guilt-covered lasagna was my mother. She stood up the moment I got out of my car. "Oh my goodness. You look absolutely wonderful," she said, her arms already reaching out for a hug. I didn't hug her. I just looked at her like you'd look at a stranger, because that's exactly what she was to me. "Mom," I said quietly, my voice completely flat. "Why are you here?" She had the audacity to smile like this was just some casual, friendly drop-in visit. "I wanted to see you, honey. It's been so long. I thought maybe we could talk, catch up a little bit." I leaned against my doorframe and didn't move an inch. "Is Olivia okay?" I asked. Her face flickered. And there it was. The real reason. Not love, not regret. Not even a half-hearted apology. Just need. "She and Marcus lost their apartment," she said, her voice taking on that pleading tone I remembered from childhood when she wanted something. "They fell 3 months behind on rent because Marcus lost his job. With the twins on the way and everything, they just need a place to stay for a little while, just until they can get back on their feet financially. Your father and I thought maybe we could all stay here together just for a few months. Like a family." I almost burst out laughing right in her face. "You kicked me out with a backpack and a note," I said slowly, carefully enunciating every single word. "I begged you to listen to me, to believe me, and you told me to figure out life on my own. And now you want me to give up my peace, my home, my sanctuary, for the daughter you threw me away for?" She blinked like I'd physically slapped her across the face. "It was complicated back then, sweetheart. We were just doing what we thought was right at the time." "No," I cut in sharply. "You were doing what was easiest. You believed whatever Olivia said because it made your life simpler and more comfortable. It didn't matter if it completely destroyed mine." There was dead silence. For the first time in my entire life, I saw something that looked almost like shame flash across her eyes. Then came the defensiveness. "Well, we didn't know how things would turn out for you. You've clearly done extremely well for yourself, so maybe it wasn't such a terrible thing after all. Maybe you needed that push. That, right there. They had abandoned me, and now they wanted credit for my success." "You're not coming inside," I said firmly, my hand already on the doorknob. "And you can tell Dad and Olivia and everyone else that this house doesn't have a spare room. Not for you, not for any of you." She opened her mouth, probably preparing to beg or guilt trip me with some manipulation tactic, but I was already turning the doorknob. That's when she said it. "You're being incredibly selfish right now." I paused. I turned back around, looked her directly in the eye, and smiled. "No, Mom. I'm just done being useful to people who only remember I exist when they desperately need something from me." Then I closed the door in her face. She didn't knock again. That night I lay awake for hours thinking about everything, the weight of what had happened. The absolute audacity of them showing up at my doorstep, asking for help, acting like we were still some kind of functional family after everything they'd done to me. For a brief moment, I felt that familiar guilt creeping in. That old, awful ache of what if I'm the bad person now? What if I'm being too harsh? But then I remembered the look on my mother's face that day in the vice principal's office when Olivia lied and said I'd stolen $300 from her wallet to buy drugs. I remembered how my mother cried for Olivia, how she hugged her and stroked her hair and promised to get me help, how she never once looked at me with belief, or love, or even basic curiosity about my side of the story. Just bitter disappointment and disgust. I remembered being pulled out of class by security. I remembered my father's face when he arrived at the school, not concerned, but annoyed. I remembered being shoved out of my own home that night like garbage. I remembered the silence. 4 years of absolute deafening silence. I owed them absolutely nothing. Still, I wasn't done yet. Because part of me wanted, not revenge exactly, but accountability. Truth. I wanted people to know what had really happened, so I drafted a long, detailed email. Not to my parents or Olivia, to my extended family. The cousins, aunts, uncles, family friends, people who had heard their carefully crafted version of events for years. People who thought I was troubled, rebellious, angry, unstable. People who had judged me without ever hearing my story. I told them everything. I told them about the car crash, about Olivia's drunk driving, about my false confession to protect her. I told them about the backpack on the porch, about the note, about the 4 years of complete silence. I told them about the casserole visit and the audacity of them asking to move into my house. I even attached a screenshot of a text message Olivia had sent me years ago, one I'd never deleted. It said, "Lowell, they actually believed you took the car. You're so pathetically easy to get rid of. Have fun being homeless loser." I stared at the send button for almost 10 minutes. Then I hit it. And for once in my life, I didn't feel afraid of the consequences. The message took about an hour to ripple through the family group chat. I had muted that chat years ago, but suddenly my phone absolutely would not stop buzzing with notifications. "Aunt Marie, is this actually real? I never knew any of this happened to you." "Uncle Leo, your parents told us you ran away from home. They said you were doing drugs and living with dangerous people." "Cousin Denise, I always wondered why you just vanished. Nobody would tell me anything. That text from Olivia is absolutely disgusting. Cousin Josh, holy shit. I'm so sorry." We all believed them. Message after message poured in. Sympathy, shock, guilt, disbelief. A few were awkward and uncomfortable, the kind of apologetic attempts that felt more about easing their own discomfort than actually acknowledging my pain. But I didn't mind those. I hadn't written the email for pity or sympathy. I'd written it for the truth. For accountability, then came the last name I ever expected to show up in my inbox. Marcus, Olivia's husband. "I'm so incredibly sorry. I had absolutely no idea about any of this. Olivia told me you were mentally unstable and violent. She said your grandfather had to take you in after you physically assaulted your mother. I feel genuinely sick reading this." I stared at his message for a long while, completely unsure of how to respond or even if I should respond. He messaged again a few minutes later. "I left her last night." My breath literally caught in my throat. Apparently, Marcus had read my entire email out loud to Olivia. She laughed at first, nervous and dismissive. Then she got defensive, then angry. Then, according to Marcus, she completely lost it. She grabbed his phone and tried to delete the email, screaming at him for being naive and gullible, calling him an idiot for believing my lies. Marcus, 7 months away from becoming a father to twins, finally seeing the pattern of manipulation clearly for the first time, packed a bag and left for his brother's apartment that same night. Marcus sent one more message. "Your email made me see everything clearly. The gaslighting, the lies, the manipulation. Our babies deserve better than growing up around that. Thank you for telling the truth. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel victorious. I just typed back, you did the right thing for yourself and your children. That should have been the end of it." The final chapter. But Olivia never could handle being exposed or losing control of a narrative. 5 days later, I was leaving my gym after an early morning workout class, just walking toward my car in the parking lot, when I heard someone call my name. I turned around and saw her standing there. Olivia. She looked like a completely different person from the polished, perfect image she'd always maintained. She was thinner, almost gaunt. Her hair was unwashed and pulled back messily. She was wearing an old college sweatshirt that had stains on it, and her eyes looked sunken and dark. "You think you're so much better than me now?" She sneered, her voice dripping with venom. I didn't answer. I just stood there, my gym bag over my shoulder, waiting. She walked closer. Too close. I could smell stale wine on her breath even though it was barely 7 a.m. You always played the victim, she hissed. Even now, even after everything. What do you want, a medal? You want everyone to feel sorry for poor little rejected you? You think anyone actually gives a damn about your pathetic sob story? I could smell cheap alcohol on her breath, sharp and sour. You lied, I said calmly, quietly, my voice steady. You lied about the car. You lied about me stealing from you. You lied to your husband about who I was. Yeah. She laughed, bitter and sharp and broken. So what? You survived, didn't you? You've got your big fancy house and your little magazine interview and your perfect life, so quit crying about the past. Get over it. There was so much I wanted to say in that moment. I wanted to scream. I wanted to list every single night I cried myself to sleep in that diner break room. Every birthday I spent completely alone. Every time I doubted my own worth, my own value as a human being, because of her lies and their rejection. But I didn't. Because I suddenly realized something. She wanted a scene. She wanted drama. She wanted me to break down or fight back so she could play victim herself. So instead, I stepped around her, opened my car door, and said just one thing. You lied. I survived. I thrived. And now you have to live with that reality for the rest of your life. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing alone in that parking lot. That evening, I had dinner with my grandfather at his small house across town. He was the only family member who had never needed proof, who had never asked for my side of the story because he simply believed me. He'd been the one who secretly slipped me $200 in an envelope 4 years ago when he somehow found out I was homeless. I told him everything, about the email, about all the messages from family members, about the confrontation with Olivia in the parking lot. He listened carefully, his weathered hands folded neatly in his lap on the table, only nodding occasionally to show he was following along. After I finished, he reached across the table and held my hand in both of his. His hands were rough from decades of construction work, warm and solid and real. You did good, kiddo, he said simply. You told the truth. That's all that matters. That was all I needed to hear. A week later, I received a certified letter delivered by a postal worker who made me sign for it. It was from my parents' lawyer. Apparently, they were considering pursuing defamation proceedings over my email to the extended family. The letter used fancy legal language about false statements, reputational damage, and family libel. I laughed so hard I actually had tears running down my face. My own lawyer, yes, I'd finally hired one for myself, something I never thought I'd need, told me to relax completely. Their claims are absolutely baseless, she said, scanning through the threatening letter with an amused smile. Empty threats from desperate people. The evidence you have, especially Olivia's own text message admission, would bury them in any courtroom. They won't actually file anything. She was right. I never heard back from their lawyer again. The whole thing just disappeared. They went quiet. Again. I guess when you stop being useful to them, you stop existing to them. That's when I decided to do something I hadn't done in years, something that felt both painful and powerful. I framed the note they'd left taped to my backpack that night. The one that said, "You made your choice. Figure out life on your own now." It hangs in my home office now, right next to my 30 Under 30 Innovators Award from the Business Association. Some people frame their college diplomas or their children's artwork. I framed a warning and turned it into a promise. A reminder of what I survived. A reminder that I built this life from nothing. Backup plan. That's what my mother called me. Just a backup. An insurance policy. A shadow in the family portrait. A chair left empty at holiday dinners. A name barely spoken aloud unless it followed the phrase, "Whatever happened to her." But do you want to know the cruelest part of being labeled a backup plan? Backup plans get pulled out and used when the original fails. And that's exactly what they tried to do. Use me. Recycle me like I was some kind of resource they could access whenever convenient. It began again with another knock. Not a voicemail, not a text message, not another vehicle mysteriously parked on my street. An actual knock on my front door just after sunset on a Wednesday evening. I almost didn't answer it. But something in me felt like I needed to. Some instinct that this was different. When I opened the door, I didn't see my father the way I remembered him. I didn't see the cold, authoritative man who had pointed me toward the door and told me I'd embarrassed the family. I saw a man who looked like he was shrinking inside his own body. Gone was the gruff, commanding voice. Gone was the superiority complex. He stood there wearing a threadbare cardigan I'd never seen before, looking old and tired, holding an envelope in his shaking hands. Not a letter. A stack of legal papers. "I'm signing the family house over to you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, not even looking at me directly. "Your grandfather said you'd earned it more than any of us ever did." My grandfather. That was the moment I knew something was terribly wrong. "He's sick," my father added quietly, finally meeting my eyes for the first time in years. No manipulation, no preamble, just a simple, devastating fact. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. He has maybe 3 months. We sat down right there on my front porch in complete silence. The same porch where my mother had begged me for a spare room just weeks earlier. "He didn't want to tell you himself," my father muttered, staring at his hands. "Said it would distract you from your work. Said he was so incredibly proud of everything you'd built. Said you deserved to keep building without his burden weighing you down." Proud. That single word hit me, harder than anything else my father could have possibly said. I stared out at the small garden my grandfather had helped me plant last spring when he'd visited. Lavender, rosemary, and marigolds. He'd called it his living prayer. I could still see his faded work gloves hanging over the fence post where he'd forgotten them during his last visit. I swallowed my anger, pushed down my resentment toward my father, because this moment wasn't about them anymore. This wasn't about my parents or Olivia or the past. This was about him, about the one person who had never abandoned me. My grandfather passed away 3 weeks later. Not in a hospital, but at home, my home. The one my parents had once said I didn't deserve, that I'd never be able to afford, that proved I was nothing. I held his hand as his breathing grew shallower and more labored. He wasn't afraid, not even a little bit. He just looked at me with clear eyes and said, "Promise me something, kiddo. Promise me you'll plant something new every spring, something that grows. That's how you really start over. That's how you prove you're alive." And then he was gone. But not before giving me one final, unexpected gift. I found it 3 days later while cleaning out his belongings from my guest room. A small wooden box tucked under the bed, sealed with masking tape and a letter on top in his distinctive, slanted handwriting. The letter read, "To the granddaughter they never really saw." Inside the box was a stack of old journal entries, yellowing notebook paper, fading ink, notes dated from when I was 9, 11, 14, 16. Ages I had spent years trying to forget. He had written everything down, documented everything, my birthdays that were ignored or forgotten, the bruises I tried to hide, the lies Olivia told, the way my parents openly favored her, the way my mother called me a mistake when she thought nobody was listening, the way Olivia staged accusations against me. Proof, hard evidence. He had been quietly documenting it all, protecting me in the only way he could while I was still a minor trapped in that house. And at the very bottom of the box, underneath all the journal pages, was a legal document. A deed transfer for his house, the modest 3-bedroom home he'd lived in for 40 years. Already notarized, already signed, already filed with the county. He had made me the sole heir. He'd cut out my parents entirely, left everything to me. I didn't cry in that moment. Not because I wasn't devastated by losing him, but because his final act wasn't rooted in sadness or pity. It was rooted in justice, in validation, in love. He had rewritten our family's legacy with a simple legal document. The funeral was deliberately small. I kept it that way on purpose. No open invitation to distant relatives, no big family circus, just a carefully curated list of people I knew would stand respectfully during moments of silence and wouldn't try to rewrite history or make it about themselves. But of course, they came anyway, my parents, Olivia, all dressed in black like the color could somehow mask their intentions or erase their past actions. Standing at the edge of the small crowd of mourners, waiting awkwardly for an opportunity to insert themselves into the narrative. After the final prayer, after most people had left, my mother approached me slowly. She didn't cry. She didn't offer condolences. She just looked around at everything, at the house in the background, at the garden my grandfather and I had planted together, at the small community of genuine friends and professional colleagues gathered around me, people who had chosen me, people who saw my value. Then she asked the question I'd been expecting. Is it true? Did he really leave everything to you? The house, the savings, all of it? I looked her directly in the eye and said the one thing she had always denied me. Validation. Yes. Her face went pale. That house should have gone to family. It did, I said simply. It went to the family member who actually showed up. That night, after everyone had finally left, I found another letter on my doorstep. Not handwritten this time. Typed, formal, sterile. A printed request from my parents for temporary accommodation during this period of grief and financial transition. It said they wanted to move into my grandfather's house, the same house they had abandoned him in, years ago when he got too old to maintain it alone, when he needed help but they were too busy with Olivia's life. The house he'd left to me because I was the only one who visited, who called, who cared. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, just staring at that letter. Then I opened my laptop and wrote them back. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Chen, thank you for your inquiry regarding the residence located at 82 Birchwood Drive. At this time, all available rooms are currently occupied by peace, silence, dignity, memories, and the long overdue scent of lavender and fresh-baked bread. As such, we are unable to accommodate guests who abandoned these values in the past. May you find shelter in the structures you built with your own choices. Kindly, the granddaughter you forgot existed. I didn't just send that response to them privately. I posted it on social media with the full story. Not for revenge, not for attention, but for truth. For the thousands of people out there who needed to hear that they weren't alone. It went viral within days. People shared it, commented on it, stitched it with their own stories. Messages poured in from strangers, not looking for drama or entertainment, but for connection. For relief, for validation of their own experiences. Because I wasn't alone. There are so many of us, so many backup plans and spare parts who were actually the whole damn engine keeping everything running. Today, I walked through my grandfather's garden, my garden now, and I planted something new, just as I'd promised him. A single white rose bush. The variety is called Rebirth. The morning sun was warm on my face. The soil was rich and dark under my hands, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt completely, genuinely at peace. Because this story doesn't end with exile or abandonment. It doesn't end with anger or revenge. It ends with roots, with growth, with proof that you can survive being thrown away and still bloom into something beautiful. I am not a backup plan. I am not a spare part. I am not insurance or an afterthought or a shadow. I am the seed that survived the harshest winter. And I grew anyway. Thanks for watching and being part of this journey. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss another story.